Elvis's Cadillac shudders to a halt under a single beam of moonlight slicing through the rain. No sputter, just sudden silence. He sits in the driver's seat, heart still pounding from the Vegas roar, and stares at the dashboard's dead glow. The gravel road vanishes into blackness, and his radio crackles nothing but static. He reaches for his phone. No bars. The storm drums on the hood. For the first time in years, he is utterly alone. Then, a flicker. A small silhouette against the downpour. A boy, soaked to the skin, trudges forward clutching a battered toolbox. His jacket sleeve is torn at the elbow, revealing a scraped forearm. He pauses, lifts a slim flashlight, and holds it steady on Elvis's face. "Need some help?" the boy calls, voice soft but sure. Elvis exhales rain-scented air. Tonight, the floodlight of fame is a memory. Ahead lies a different kind of rescue. Let us know where you're watching from, and we hope you enjoy the story. Elvis pressed the edge of his palm against the hot steel door of the Cadillac, the rain-slicked gravel crunching beneath the tires as the engine's steady purr gave way to an ominous cough, and then silence. He sat back in the driver's seat, coat collar turned up against the chill, listening to the rhythmic drumming of raindrops across the vinyl roof. The dashboard clock glowed 11:17 p.m. He'd been on the road for hours, fleeing the glare of Vegas and the endless demands of the Colonel. Now he was stranded on a backcountry lane, halfway between Louisiana pine woods and Mississippi bayous, with nothing but darkness and the crackle of his own thoughts. He turned the key again, but the starter refused its summons. A metallic click echoed like a taunt. He ran a hand through his thick hair, smoothed over with honey-scented pomade at the last stop. Behind him, the seat bore the shape of a king. But out here, alone, he was just a man in a white suit and worn boots, vulnerable beneath the howling wind and low sheet of rain that blurred the trees into gray shadows. He reached across the console for the CB mic, thumb brushing the talk button. "Breaker. Breaker. Anybody." No response. The static hiss was a settling fog. He leaned forward, one hand on the steering wheel, eyes searching the inky black beyond the windshield. There were no houses, no streetlights, only the wet road stretching like a trembling ribbon into night. Then, through the windshield wiper's slow arc, he saw a flicker of movement, a pinpoint of light, bobbing, approaching. A boy, no more than 11 or 12, trudged toward the car with a battered flashlight in one hand and a stained toolbox in the other. The flashlight beam danced across the wet gravel, illuminating glints of metal, wrenches, pliers, sockets. The boy's jacket was soaked and torn at the elbow, revealing threadbare cloth beneath. Elvis opened the door before he thought to lock it. The rain slapped his face as he stepped onto the ground, water seeping through his loafers. The boy paused, trained the beam on Elvis's face, and blinked. "Evenin', mister," the boy said, voice low but steady. His wide eyes shifted from Elvis's pale suit to the Cadillac's hood. "You broke down?" Elvis nodded. He raised his chin against the spray. "Engine died. Something about the starter, I reckon." The boy set his toolbox down, flashlight beam steadying on the grill. "You're the man in white coat," he said. "Elvis Presley, right?" Elvis hesitated. No one ever recognized him out here, too far from the strip and the bright lights. He checked the boy's face for signs of mockery, but found only earnestness and something deeper, a guarded respect. "That's what they call me," Elvis replied. He offered a thin smile, grateful for the boy's lack of awe. "Name's Elvis. What's yours?" "Tommy," the boy answered, stooping to flip open his toolbox. The lid rattled. An assortment of tools clinked together. My grandpa taught me how to fix his Ford. He said a man should know his way around an engine before he talks about fixing hearts. Elvis's chest tightened. He crouched beside Tommy, the rain teeming off his shoulders. The boy popped a flashlight clip onto the car's fender, illuminating the greasy maze of wires and hoses. "Starter's right here. Look at that solenoid." Tommy pointed to a small cylindrical component, its mounting bolts half stripped. "That clip fell off. If we can fix that, she might turn over." Elvis knelt beside him, rain soaking the collar of his shirt. He watched as Tommy worked the wrench with confident fingers, muscles in his small arms flexing. "You've done this before?" Elvis asked. Tommy glanced up. "My dad was a mechanic. He taught me before he—" His voice faltered. He swallowed. "He died 2 years ago. About time I learned on my own." Elvis inhaled sharply. The boy's pain was a mirror of his own. The loss of a father, world-shaking even for a star. He set a hand on Tommy's shoulder. The boy didn't flinch. "Your dad sounds like a good man." Tommy's jaw tightened. He repositioned the wrench and tightened the solenoid clip with a satisfying click. "He was. Said a man's work is never done if he's honest." Elvis closed his eyes briefly, rain masking the wet gleam there. He fought back a wave of exhaustion, of loneliness that had driven him from the limelight. "Thank you, Tommy. You're a damn good mechanic." Tommy shrugged, wiping grease from his cheek with the back of his hand. "Let's see if she'll start." Elvis climbed into the driver's seat again. Tommy turned the flashlight toward the dashboard as Elvis twisted the key. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the engine roared to life, coughing once, then settling into a smooth growl. The headlights cut through the rain, illuminating the boy's face in sudden brightness. Elvis reached out the window and patted Tommy's shoulder. "You got a gift, kid. You ever want to learn more? I'll take you to a shop." Tommy's grin broke the wet gloom. "Really?" Elvis nodded, voice soft. "Really." High above, lightning forked skyward, and the rain eased into a steady drizzle. In that moment, the roar of a revived engine, the boy's hopeful eyes, the storm's retreat, Elvis realized that sometimes salvation demanded a detour into the unknown, and that even a king could be rescued by a boy with a toolbox and a heart brave enough to shine through the darkness. Elvis watched as Tommy's small fingers worked precisely on the starter solenoid, his brow furrowed in concentration under the circle of flashlight. Rain dripped relentlessly from the Cadillac's hood, sluicing over spokes and dripping into the boy's collar. But Tommy ignored the chill. He leaned in, voice measured and clear. "The solenoid's grounding strap is loose, and these wires are corroded. If we reroute the positive lead through this bracket and tighten the bolt here, she should crank better." Elvis knelt beside him in the gravel, heart pounding with admiration. He'd never met a child so unflappable in the face of a dead engine, and a downpour that would have sent most running for cover. The boy's toolbox lay open, an arsenal of ratchets, pliers, sockets, and wire brushes, each tool battered yet gleaming from constant use. "Where did you learn to do all this?" Elvis asked softly, reluctant to break the rhythm of Tommy's work. Tommy gave a half-smile without looking up. "My dad," he said, voice cracked by memory. He paused, brush in hand, scrubbing away rust. "He taught me to listen to machines. He'd say, 'The engine speaks, kiddo. You just gotta learn its language.'" His face darkened. "I miss him every day." Elvis closed his eyes for a moment, rain tracing rivulets down his cheeks. He knew that ache of losing someone whose voice still echoed in your bones. He reached over and covered Tommy's hand with his own, large and warm. "I'm sorry, kid." Tommy's fingers stilled on the bracket. He lifted his head, eyes wide in the flashlight glow. My grandpa says I shouldn't dream too big. He thinks I'll just get hurt. He shrugged the wet hair off his forehead. But I want to open my own shop one day. Fix trucks and tractors, keep folks rolling. Elvis's chest tightened. That's a good dream, he replied. His mind flashed back to the roar of Vegas crowds, the neon blaze, the endless expectation. He had built his life on spectacle and applause, but here, under dripping pines and graying skies, he felt the first stirrings of something real. Purpose, unadorned by pageantry. Tommy fitted the rerouted wire into place, clicking the bracket bolt snug. He wiped his hands on a rag, then twisted the key in the Cadillac's ignition again. The engine growled thoughtfully, then sprang to life in a smooth, purring roar. Water sprayed from the wheel wells as the car settled, the boy's face lit with triumph. "It's working!" he exclaimed, eyes shining like polished chrome. "Thanks, mister. I knew I could do it." Elvis climbed up into the driver's seat, letting the engine idle. "No, thank you," he answered. "I might never have figured that out on my own." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled pack of American spirits. Lighting one, he offered Tommy one, a fleeting invitation to share warmth. The boy shook his head politely. Elvis tucked the pack back and leaned out the window. "Where do you live?" "Down the road, by the old mill," Tommy replied, voice thickening. "With my grandpa. He's sick, can't do much anymore. That old Ford is our livelihood." Elvis looked at the dark stretch of road ahead. Pine shadows flickered in the wiper's arc. Beyond, mist rose from roadside ditches. "Hop in," he said suddenly. Tommy's jaw dropped. "But I shouldn't." Elvis shook his head. "You earned it. I owe you one." He flipped on the headlights, the beam carving a path through the rain. "Let's get you home." The boy clambered into the passenger seat, toolbox perched between his knees. Elvis shifted the car into gear and rolled forward, headlights illuminating the twin ribbons of wet asphalt. With each turn of the wheel, Elvis felt the weight on his shoulders lighten, his own ache for escape mirrored in Tommy's proud determination. As they drove, a lull settled between them, only the hum of tires on gravel and the patter of rain. Tommy glanced at Elvis's pale suit, now speckled with mud. "You run away a lot, don't you?" he said, voice small but perceptive. Elvis's hand tightened on the wheel. He didn't look at the boy. "Yeah," he admitted. "Sometimes I need to get away from the music, the crowds, from being Elvis Presley." His voice cracked with the confession. "Out here, I'm just a guy trying to find himself." Tommy absorbed that quietly. Then he broke the silence, tone gentle. "Well, mister, I think you did all right today. You helped me fix that old engine." He tapped the toolbox. "I think you're a good man." Elvis swallowed against the lump in his throat. The road wound past cypress trees dripping Spanish moss. Ahead, the dim lights of a small farmhouse glowed behind a screen of oaks. Tommy pointed. "That's Grandpa's place." They pulled into a narrow driveway where a low porch light outlined an ancient pickup and a weathered rocking chair. An elderly man, stooped and wrapped in a plaid shirt, stepped into the rain with a lantern. His eyes widened at the sight of Elvis at the wheel, suit bright against the night. "Elvis," the old man whispered, voice cracking. I'm honored." Tommy jumped down and ran to his grandpa's side, flashlight still clutched. Elvis followed, offering a polite nod. The old man's face was a map of kindness and weariness, etched by years and hardships. The trio moved beneath the porch roof. Steam rose from bowls of soup waiting on the table. The aroma of homemade stock and fresh bread filled the still air. Tommy's grandpa placed a bowl before Elvis, stubbing out his cigarette on the steps. "You must be cold, son," he said kindly. "Eat up." Elvis sat and accepted the bowl, warmth radiating through him. He glanced at Tommy, now animatedly describing how he'd learned from his father. Tears glimmered in the boy's eyes. Elvis closed his fist around his spoon. "Your boy's got talent," he said. "Don't let him forget it." Tommy beamed. The old man patted Elvis's shoulder. "Come back anytime," he said. "You're welcome under this roof." Elvis nodded, feeling as though he'd found a home for the first time in years. The rain slowed to a hush. Inside that modest farmhouse kitchen, with its checkered tablecloth and mismatched chairs, the biggest star in the world was simply a guest. Someone who had come seeking peace and found a family in the hum of an engine and the kindness of a boy's dream. Elvis settled into the passenger seat of the old Ford, its heater finally chasing away the damp chill of the night air. Tommy climbed in beside him, toolbox wedged at his feet. The house lights of the farmhouse cast soft rectangles on the windshield, and the faint aroma of wood smoke and supper drifted through the cracked window. On the dashboard, tucked beneath the corner of the glove compartment, was a small, faded photograph. Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie, standing in front of Graceland's ornate gates. Her blonde curls glowed in the afternoon sun. She held a bouquet of daisies and beamed at the camera, her innocent grin wide as summer. Elvis had carried that picture with him through countless performances, a talisman against the loneliness that came with life in the spotlight. As the engine's gentle purr lulled across the gravel drive, Tommy leaned forward, eyes bright. He pointed at the photo without hesitation. "Who's that?" he asked quietly. "Your daughter?" Elvis turned his gaze to the image, fingertips brushing its edges. He looked back at Tommy through the rearview mirror, his reflection half lit by the dashboard glow. "That's my little girl," he said, voice low with tenderness. "Lisa Marie. She's everything to me." Tommy nodded, studying Elvis's profile. The boy's brows drew together in thoughtful lines. Then, surprising Elvis, Tommy's voice cracked with honest yearning. "I wish someone said that about me." He stared at the steering wheel, knuckles whitening on the metal rim. "I've never had a dad. My grandpa's good. He's like a rock. But I never had someone call me their world." A hush fell between them, thick as syrup. The wind rustled through the magnolia trees overhead, and a solitary cricket chirped somewhere in the dark. Elvis exhaled, feeling the weight of the boy's words settle in his chest. He turned in his seat to meet Tommy's eyes. "You're more than just a kid who can fix cars, Tommy," he said softly. "You've got a fire in you, a spark most people spend their lives chasing." Tommy's shoulders eased, but his gaze held a distant sadness. When he spoke again, it was almost a whisper. "Grandpa always says folks who can't have kids find places to pour their hearts. But he's too busy keeping the roof over our heads. He doesn't have your kind of heart." Elvis felt a lump in his throat, part sympathy, part guilt. He gripped the edge of the seat, jaw clenched against overwhelm. Moments passed before he found his voice. "How would you like a different kind of mentor?" he asked, voice hushed. Tommy blinked, uncertain. "What do you mean?" Elvis's eyes glinted in the dim light. "I mean, maybe you and I could work together. You teach me more about these engines of yours, and well, I can teach you a few things I've learned on the road. Music, life, whatever you want." The idea seemed too grand to Tommy's simple cares. He hesitated, then shook his head. "I can't ask that much of you. You've got your own life." Elvis placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. It was a gesture both paternal and accepting, a promise unspoken. "Tommy, tonight, you and your grandpa offered me shelter when I was lost. That's worth more than any stage or crowd. And right now, I could use a friend." Tommy swallowed hard, the first glimmer of a smile softening his features. He nodded once. "Then I'll show you the guest room. Grandpa's been knowing people who come out of nowhere, but never a king." Elvis chuckled, a sound as light as the wind through the pines. "I'll take it as a compliment." They climbed out into the rain-slicked yard, heading toward the warm light spilling from the kitchen windows. Tommy's toolbox felt heavier with promise in Elvis's hand, but the boy gamely carried it ahead, lantern beam bobbing. On the porch, a kindly figure stood. Tommy's grandfather, coat wrapped around his stooped frame, eyes creased with surprise and welcome. "Evenin', Mr. Presley," the old man rumbled, voice thick with courtesy. "I didn't rightly believe the boy when he said you'd show up." Elvis offered a genuine smile. "Just call me Elvis tonight." The kitchen was small but cozy. A wooden table set with bowls of steaming soup, a loaf of homemade bread cooling on a rack, and a vase of wildflowers that brightened the corner. The air was redolent of simmering broth and fresh biscuits, comfort distilled in scent. Tommy's grandpa motioned to the chairs. "Sit down, both of you. I made extra for company." As they settled at the table, the storm outside seemed to recede, the wind's howl replaced by the clink of spoons and the hum of conversation. Elvis spooned a mouthful of soup, warmth flooding his senses. He watched Tommy and his grandfather share a quiet exchange over their bowls, a ritual as timeless as blood and bone. Tommy absently fingered the edge of his mechanic's logbook lying next to his soup bowl. "Grandpa, you remember when Dad first showed me how to change the spark plugs?" he whispered, eyes bright with memory. The old man nodded, misting over. "Aye, you were just a mite, but you had his hands. He'd tell anyone. You had the gift." Elvis listened, heart swelling with empathy. The boy and his grandfather, bound by loss and resilience, reminded him of his own childhood in Tupelo, days spent listening to the hum of neighbors' tractors, dreaming of a world beyond his front porch. After a long silence, Elvis cleared his throat. "Tommy," he began, setting down his spoon, "I want to help you make that dream real. I have some money saved for a studio, for musicians, but I'd rather invest it in you. Use it however you need. Tools, rent on a garage, anything." Tommy's fork clattered against his bowl. The old man's hand flew to his mouth. "I can't accept that," Tommy stammered. "I don't want charity." Elvis leaned forward, eyes steady. "It's not charity. It's belief. I believe you'll pay it forward." He retrieved a thick envelope from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. "Open it when you're ready." Tommy stared at the envelope as if it held an entire lifetime. Tears welled in his eyes. He looked at Elvis. "Thank you," he whispered, no longer timid but resolute. "I won't let you down." Elvis nodded, warmth radiating through the room. Outside, the rain eased to a gentle patter. Inside, a new chapter unfolded. A star and a boy, strangers on a lonely road, forging a bond that neither fame nor fortune could ever buy. In that humble kitchen, beneath flickering lamplight, they discovered that true guidance and family often arrive without notice, carried on the kindness of hearts willing to say, "You belong." Morning light filtered through the sagging curtains of the farmhouse kitchen, painting the wooden table in pale gold. Elvis sat on a cushioned chair, nursing a steaming mug of coffee that tasted faintly of cinnamon and home. Across from him, Tommy spooned oatmeal into his mouth with quiet concentration. the familiar ritual of breakfast, anchoring him to this simple, perfect moment. The old linoleum floor creaked beneath their chairs as Tommy's grandfather shuffled in, ladle in hand, refilling bowls without a word. Only a warm nod. Outside, the sky was soft and overcast, the rain from last night's storm lingering in hazy drifts above the fields. A gentle breeze ruffled the lace curtains and carried the scent of damp earth and blooming honeysuckle into the room. Elvis traced the grain of the worn tabletop with a fingertip, eyes drifting from the bowl of fresh biscuits to the sturdy figure of the old man, who moved with deliberate care. Tommy glanced up, excitement flickering in his bright eyes. He reached beneath the table and produced a slender notebook bound in cracked leather, the mechanical logbook he'd kept since before his father died. He laid it before Elvis like a sacred artifact. Each page was meticulously filled. Dates, part numbers, handwritten diagrams of starters and distributors, notes about spark plug gaps, oil viscosity, and troubleshooting methods. Small sketches of hand tools lined the margins. Elvis leaned forward, scanning a page from April 1972. Replaced starter solenoid. Learn to listen for that clicking before the engine turns over. He smiled, genuinely impressed by the boy's diligence. "You've logged every fix," he said softly. "You treat your work like a portfolio." Tommy beamed. "My dad taught me that every detail mattered," he said. "If you miss one screw, the whole engine can fail." He closed the book with a satisfied snap. "I want to open my own garage someday. Fix tractors, pickup trucks, Cadillacs, whatever comes in." Elvis set down his coffee and reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He withdrew a plain manila envelope, sealed with a strip of red tape. Tommy's grandfather watched, eyebrows lifting as Elvis placed it on the table. "Open it when you're ready," Elvis said, his voice both calm and grave. Tommy's fingers trembled as he slit the envelope. Inside lay a stack of crisp bills, enough to rent a small workshop, purchase tools, and cover initial expenses, and a folded note in Elvis's elegant script. "Invest in your heart, not just your hands. This is your start. E.P." The boy looked up, tears glistening. His lips trembled. I can't take this." Elvis rose and walked around the table, kneeling beside Tommy. He laid a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "This isn't charity, Tommy. It's faith. I believe you'll honor it by building something real, something you can be proud of." Tommy swallowed, his gaze drifting to the linoleum floor. He tucked the money back into the envelope and slid it into his logbook's back pocket. "Thank you, Mr. Presley," he whispered. Elvis touched the boy's chin, lifting his face. "Call me Elvis," he said, "and know you're not alone." Tommy managed a small smile. Across the table, the old man dabbed at his eyes with a checkered napkin. He rose, cleared the dishes, and offered Elvis another cup of coffee. "You're welcome here any time," he said quietly. Elvis stood, nodding his thanks. He glanced toward the front entrance, where the Cadillac, once his refuge, sat glistening under a veil of morning mist. He walked out the back door alone, then returned with the car key clenched in his fist. The metal glinted in the soft light. Tommy's grandfather peered from the doorway. "You going back out there?" he asked gently. Elvis held the key aloft. "That Cadillac's got a new owner," he replied. "It helped me tonight. Now I want it to help you." The old man's lip quivered. "Son, you sure?" Elvis nodded, eyes steady. "She's yours, Tommy. Keep her running. She'll get you where you need to go." A hush fell over the farmhouse yard as Tommy ran forward to take the key. He grasped Elvis's hand, and for a moment the two stood, man and boy, bound by gratitude and trust. Then Elvis stepped back, hands in his pockets, and watched Tommy slide into the driver's seat, engine turning over smoothly. As the Cadillac's taillights wove two ruby lines through the early fog, Elvis turned to leave. He paused, glancing back at the farmhouse where the old man and the boy stood waving. Elvis's breath caught on a wave of emotion he seldom allowed himself to feel. 3 weeks later, in Memphis, newspapers ran a short, curious headline above the fold: "Presley skips Vegas show. Found peace instead." Meanwhile, out on a dusty rural highway, Tommy Phillips, his leather-bound logbook riding shotgun, and the Cadillac's headlights carving a path through dawn, smiled for the first time without reservation. Behind him lay a farmhouse that had become family. Ahead lay a future he would build with his own hands. And Elvis Presley, back in the glare of spotlights and the roar of adoring crowds, carried a lighter heart, a quiet knowledge that sometimes the greatest encore is the life you help another person start.